Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from Australia, English language, released in the year 2016, directed by Cameron and Colin Cairns, and this film is called Scare Campaign. So Scare Campaign is about this TV show under the same name. You've got this director who specialises in setting people up to believe that they're in haunted environments, and so when they're freaked out, he comes onto the camera and he says, "Surprise, you've been pranked, this is all a joke," and so you're part of Scare Campaign. So this is ultimately why this show is so popular, but unfortunately for television, the internet is taken over because there is this new wave of real-life snuff videos that have a lot of people watching, and so this is ultimately having a negative effect on the television. So the director's boss says, "Look, you're going to have to come up with a way in order to get this show more hardcore, otherwise you can kiss this project goodbye." So he only has one project to satisfy the director's boss's needs, otherwise they can find another job. So they're brainstorming and they believe they've come across the perfect scare without going over the limits, and this consists of taking this unsuspecting man to this abandoned mental hospital, and this is going to be the mother of all pranks, and it's going to be an unforgettable experience. But unfortunately for the crew involved, it's going to be an unforgettable experience in all the wrong ways, because this man they're playing the prank on is the last man that you want to play a joke on, because it turns out that he has a very troubled history. So their situation is about to go from bad to worse very quickly, and whether or not they can make it out of this ordeal is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Scare Campaign. By far the most interesting element of this film, and the surprising element, was the fact that it is a commentary on television and the combat between television and internet, and how internet is actually taking over television, and how television are doing desperate things in order to try and keep up. And this movie, although it's not a documentary, it's not documenting this in a very serious way, it still has that side element that actually makes you think about it. And so whether or not, can you have the ultimate scare without going too far, without actually hurting somebody? So it shows you the creative mind and how creative you have to be in order to actually produce something that an audience will want to watch, and especially because this particular audience is so desensitized to violence, and that these days they want to see real execution videos, they want to see real snuff movies as opposed to something that's fake. So you're always looking for that next fix, and I thought it was very interesting to see what these television corporations were willing to do in order to get that fix, and how competitive the overall market can be. So that was the most interesting aspect of the film, but the most surprising aspect of this movie was the fact that it was so entertaining. I was actually dismissed this movie as just another forgettable Australian horror films, because more often than not, Australian movies, horror movies in particular, are very lackluster. They don't have that lasting impression, and they're always very disappointing because they feel like they're all made for television. But Scare Campaign is definitely not one of those films. I thought this was very, very nasty and very creative in the way that it was actually going about things. When you actually get the twist, you think, oh, okay, well, I saw that coming, but then all of a sudden there's another twist, and you think, where did that come from? And all of a sudden the movie is taking you to places that you didn't initially think you would. You think you've outsmarted the director, but in reality the director has outsmarted you, and he's taking you for a ride, and it's just a very rewarding experience, because it is very spooky in what it's trying to do. It does have that side element of making you think, and it also has that element of a slasher feel, and the slasher feel was fantastically done because the gore effects were superb. And this is a very practical gore effect, it's not CGI violence, nothing feels cheap, and the kills are very good. There aren't too many kills, but when the kills actually hit you, they hit you with a lot of impact, and the contrasting difference between the reality and the TV show was very interesting as well, because there wasn't too much of a difference. So it does show you the desensitized nature of violence and how far modern society has come as far as provocative material is concerned. But the movie never sidetracks it in itself in preaching you something. It just allows you to have a lot of fun, but at the same time it gives it a little bit of a base to make it a little bit more in depth than you initially get with these types of films. So the acting was fairly decent. You've got some very well-known actors, Australian actors, so if you are a fan of Australian cinema, you will have seen these before. They all look like they're having a lot of fun. There's no relatability to these characters. You don't really care what happens, but it's all about that commentary between internet and television, how evil internet can be and how innocent television can be. So I thought that aspect was very smart, and it was one that I really enjoyed. And then you've got the pacing, which was fantastic, and it just keeps you guessing, and that's ultimately what the best thing about this film is. It's not just a generic slasher type of film. It is actually a movie that does take you off guard. It is unpredictable, and by the end of the film I just left thinking, okay, well, I just wasn't expecting anything, but what I got was just an incredibly fun horror film. Not the best film going around, but it's certainly not not the worst. If you are a fan of Australian horror, or if you're a fan of horror in general, then Scare Campaign is definitely one I would recommend. It's got some absolutely brutal gore in there, which I loved, and as a result of that, I came away from Scare Campaign actually appreciating this as much as I appreciated Wormwood. So I watched Wormwood a long time ago, and it's not since Wormwood where I've had this much fun in a horror film from Australia. So overall for Scare Campaign, very impressive. Go out there and see it. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, watching movies, and I'll see you later.